Do you think you're in control? That you're a rational person who makes logical decisions? Well, think again. History is littered with psychological experiments that went so spectacularly off the rails. They prove just how easily our civilized masks can slip. Today, we're diving into 3 of the wildest cases where researchers completely lost control and ordinary people turned into chaos agents. Let's start in 1967 in a high school history class in Palo Alto, California. A teacher named Ron Jones was struggling to explain to his students how the German people could have claimed ignorance of the Holocaust. To make the point, he started a little experiment. He called it the third wave. On day 1, he established strict discipline. Students had to sit at attention, stand up to ask or answer questions, and start every statement with Mr. Jones. The students, surprisingly, loved it. They felt a sense of purpose and order. On day 2, he introduced a salute, a curved hand brought across the chest, and a motto: strength through discipline, strength through community. The class was energized. They were a unit. By day 3, things escalated. The movement was growing. Students from other classes were joining. Jones created membership cards and assigned some students to report anyone who didn't follow the rules. Suddenly, friends were telling on friends. A sense of paranoia and militant loyalty filled the school. The students were no longer playing a role. They were living it. They were the third wave. And on the 5th day, their new national leader would be revealed on television. The students were ecstatic. The next day, over 200 students packed into the auditorium, chanting their mottos, their fists pumping the air. The energy was electric, bordering on fanatical. Jones turned on the TV. It was just static. The students were confused, then anxious. After a few minutes of agonizing silence, Jones finally spoke. He revealed the truth. There was no leader. There was no national movement. "You've been used," he told them. "You've been manipulated." Then he played a film of a Nazi rally. He showed them the salutes, the discipline, the blind loyalty. "This is where it leads," he said. The students were in shock. Some cried. They had become the very thing they were studying, all in just 5 days. Now, let's rewind to 1954 to a beautiful state park in Oklahoma called Robbers Cave. Psychologist Muzafer Sharif had an idea. He wanted to see how conflict and prejudice develop between groups. So he organized a summer camp for 22 boys, all 11-year-olds from similar backgrounds who had never met before. He split them into 2 groups, the Eagles and the Rattlers. For the first week, the groups didn't know the other existed. They bonded through typical camp activities: hiking, swimming, building campfires. They created their own flags, their own inside jokes. They became tight-knit teams. Then, Sharif brought them together for a series of competitive games. Tug of war, baseball, a treasure hunt. The winner would get a trophy and some cool pocket knives. The loser, nothing. The friendly competition quickly turned hostile. The Eagles and Rattlers started insulting each other. They burned each other's flags. They raided each other's cabins, stealing belongings and causing chaos. It got so bad the researchers had to physically separate them. The boys weren't just rivals, they genuinely hated each other. Sharif had successfully created two warring tribes. Now, he had to figure out how to put them back together. First, he tried just bringing them together for fun activities, like watching a movie. It didn't work. They just sat on opposite sides of the room, shouting insults. The prejudice was too deep. So he tried a new tactic. He created a series of problems that both groups had to solve together. The camp's water supply mysteriously failed, and all 22 boys had to work together to find the problem. Another time, the truck they needed to get food broke down, and every single boy had to pull on a rope to get it started. Slowly, something amazing happened. As they worked towards these common goals, the hostility started to melt away. They stopped being eagles and rattlers. They started being campers. By the end of the experiment, the boys were friends. They chose to ride home on the same bus, pooling their prize money to buy everyone milkshakes. The Robbers Cave experiment proved that while competition can breed intense prejudice, shared goals and cooperation are powerful enough to break it down. It's a bit like a real-life Lord of the Flies, but with a surprisingly hopeful ending. Now, for something completely different. We've seen how group dynamics can spiral out of control. But what happens when the people who are supposed to be in control, like an entire government, have a wild idea? Let's talk about Project A119. This wasn't an experiment on unwitting subjects. It was a top-secret plan hatched by the United States Air Force in 1958 at the height of the Cold War. The Soviet Union was beating America in the space race. They had launched Sputnik, and American morale was low. The US government needed a massive, undeniable show of force. They needed to prove their superiority. So, what was their genius idea? To detonate a nuclear bomb on the moon. Yes, you heard that right. The plan was to launch a missile carrying a small atomic warhead and crash it into the lunar surface. The explosion would be timed so that the dark side of the moon was facing Earth, making the nuclear flash visible to the naked eye. The goal was purely psychological. It was meant to be a planetary-scale flex, a way of intimidating the Soviets and boosting morale at home by showing the world that America could do something as insanely powerful as nuking the moon. A team of scientists, including a young Carl Sagan, was assembled to study the feasibility of the project. They worked out the trajectory, the potential effects of the blast, and the visibility of the mushroom cloud from Earth. Thankfully, sanity prevailed. The military leaders realized that if the mission failed and the missile crashed back to Earth, it would be a catastrophic disaster. Plus, there was the risk of contaminating the moon with radioactive material, which would ruin it for any future exploration or colonization. The plan was quietly scrapped. Project A119 remained a secret for decades until it was declassified in the year 2000. It's as a perfect, almost comical example of how even the most powerful institutions can get swept up in paranoia and come up with ideas that are literally out of this world crazy. So what's the takeaway from all this? We think of ourselves as independent individuals, but the right situation, the right group, or the right amount of fear can turn us into something we don't recognize. Or a superpower, considering lunar nukes. These stories show that the line between order and chaos is thinner than we'd like to believe. And that's a thought that's both terrifying and incredibly important to remember. Thanks for watching. If you found this dive into the wild side of human psychology fascinating, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories you weren't taught in school. See you next time.